Alright, what's up guys? This is Gaston's strategy guide. So about 2 weeks ago I put up a poll asking for who I should do next. Gaston didn't win, but he did get a vote. So for that one person who voted, I'm going to make this so that their vote counted for something at least. Additionally, someone else, I don't know if it was the same person or not, they also asked for Gaston, so I figured I'd just make it so that people who need help with Gaston can get it. So Gaston's one of the newer villains. He's obviously, well, it's not obvious, but he is quite difficult. He has a lot of stuff he has to do in addition to some changes to his board, which basically make him unique in comparison to the other villains. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so for Gaston, his objective is to just simply remove all 8 obstacles. Now, what are the obstacles? They're basically these. So, on your board, every location has 2 spots. And on every one of those spots, you place obstacle tokens. You have the entire game to get all 8 of those off the board, 2 from every location. Now, there are cards that just take them away. There are also cards that put them back. So when you take one away, it's not guaranteed that it's going to stay off the board. You might get set back, or you might even choose to put some back, but when you put some back, you get some really good things in as a reward for doing so. So yeah, at the start of the game, this is how it'll look. You essentially start out like this, and then you basically want to play cards that remove obstacles. There are also heroes you can defeat to remove obstacles too. So you can either defeat heroes, you can play cards to remove obstacles. Yeah, like I said before, there's cards you can play to put back an obstacle or 2, and then you get tons of stuff back for doing that. So sometimes it could be a smart idea to actually put one back to get some stuff. So yeah, another thing is some cards will specify what location obstacles can be taken from. So if there's a card that specifies only Belle's house, then obviously don't take stuff from Belle's house, because you can end up playing a card that, or defeating a hero that would take obstacles away from Belle's house. So if you take both obstacles away from Belle's house, then you do something with that card that removes stuff from that place, and there's no obstacles there, it does nothing. So you want to be efficient with stuff. Obviously, if you need to get rid of the stuff from Belle's house before you have a chance to defeat the hero or play the card, obviously that makes more sense. But if you have a choice of any location to take stuff from, and you know that there's a card that you can use with Belle's house, obviously take obstacles from other locations, because you know that you can take stuff from specifically Belle's house. So that's just an example, but that's basically a general idea. So yeah, your objective completes when all 4 of these objectives, or when all 8 of the objectives are removed. You don't have to start your turn with all of them removed. As soon as you remove the last one, game over, you win. You don't have to wait for the start of your turn. So that's a nice benefit. I'll go over his board now. First one is Belle's house. With Belle's house, you get a vanquish spot. You get to play a card. You get gain 1 power and discard cards. At the tavern, you get to activate something, gain 2 power, vanquish, and play a card. At the woods, you can play a card, discard cards, fate, and also gain 2 power. And at the beast castle, you can play 2 cards, fate, and gain 1 power. So you might notice that there's no gain 3 power location. That is true. There is no gain 3 power location with Gaston, which is kind of interesting, because every single villain up until this point has had a gain 3 power location. So yeah, that's another reason why this one is difficult, because you have a hard time getting power sometimes. So that's obviously an issue. There's also stuff like there's 2 vanquish locations. So you can obviously see that vanquishing is an important part of this. There's also fading, which is incredibly important. Make sure you're doing that. And there's also an activate location. That activate location can be very, very important. So make sure that that location is open because you need that activate location at some points. It can really help out. That's basically it for Gaston's board and objective. Now I'm going to go into his deck. So with his deck, you get 7 allies. You get wolves. To start, you get 4 wolves. Wolves gain 1 strength for every other wolf card in play. So they're kind of like hyenas from Scar, in the event that if you have more than 1, wolves are now the strength of how many wolves are in play. But the only difference is wolves are anywhere. So if you have 1 wolf in every location, they're all going to be 4 strength, because unlike hyenas where they need to be in the same location, wolves can be spread out because it just talks about cards in play. So yeah, an easy way to remember this is if there's 2 wolves out, 2 strength for each of them. It's just the number of wolves that are out is basically the strength of that one. So you don't have to go 1, 2, 3, because it's just, there's 4 of them. So the max strength the wolf can have is 4, and that's if you play all 4 of them, and they're not all gone. So next up, we have LeFou. When performing a vanquish action at LeFou's location, all allies are returned to your hand instead of the discard pile. So LeFou can be important with just getting your allies back, because if you're vanquishing a bit with your vanquish locations, LeFou can be very important because he can actually help you get your allies back instead of just being discarded. So with the wolves especially, with LeFou you can just get the wolves back and then play them again, and then they'll be strong again, instead of getting discarded and then whatever wolves you have left are just weakened. So LeFou can be incredibly important with that. Just make sure that you play him at the location that you want to be vanquishing from, because another thing I forgot to note is your board has no move an ally or item locations. So without that location, you can't move LeFou around to whatever location you want to then perform a vanquish action. So you gotta be careful of that. So next up we have Monsieur d'Arc. So he is an activate card. With this one, you pay 2 power to just remove an obstacle. So this is where the activate location can come in handy, though his ability is quite expensive. But if you're in a pinch, this could actually really help out. And I mean, if you have the power and you have nothing better to do with it, this can be a great way to just work on your objective. So yeah, that's basically all he does. I wouldn't really use him for vanquishing because he's weak. I would use him more for the ability, but it's up to you if that's what you want to do. I mean, you can always just get him back with LeFou at his location. Next up we have the Mob. It's 2 power, no additional ability. It has 4 strength. So this is just a great vanquishing card. If you need strength to vanquish or anything else, the Mob is a great one to use. So if you're vanquishing, try and use your wolves and the Mob, and kind of use Monsieur and LeFou as support characters. Keep these ones the one that you're using to vanquish and discard and do all that, and then keep these on the board to aid in your objective. So we have attack and then support. We have 2 items in his deck. 5 dozen eggs. When 5 dozen eggs is played, attach it to an ally. That ally gains 2 strength. I don't know why, but this card is incredibly expensive for what it does. There are cards like this in other decks that cost 2 and sometimes even 1. So why these are so expensive, I have no idea. So I really never use these. I always discard them. I I guess it can be helpful if you're trying to vanquish someone stronger like the beast with just the mob, but I feel like 4 power, 4 cost for just 2 strength is very, very expensive. For my strategy, I stay away from that, and I just use other things like the wolves to build up strength on someone instead of spending 4 power to just add 2 strength to one person. So Show Me the Beast is an effect. If the beast is in play, remove 1 obstacle, and if Belle is in play, replace 1 obstacle. If both are in play, gain 2 power. This is an interesting card because if you have the beast on your board, you can remove an obstacle, which can be helpful. However, if Belle is in play, I wouldn't play this card because then you're replacing an objective and you're not getting anything in return. Now, if both of them are in play, because the beast would be in play and you remove an obstacle and the Belle is in play to remove 1 obstacle, you basically net 0, you wouldn't gain or lose anything. So they say that if both are in play, you gain 2 power, so that instead of just holding on to this card because both are in play, you can actually play it and have some type of benefit from it. The only issue is it costs 2 power and then you gain 2 power. So it's basically just a discard at that point in time. If both are in play, you're paying 2 and then gaining 2. You're basically just discarding this card without a discard location. But keep in mind, if you're going to do that, you're using up a play a card which you could actually use to do something. So I tend to only use this if I have the beast in play by himself, because having both in play doesn't really do me any good, and having Belle in play is bad. So I always make sure I have beast in play if I'm going to play this. If they're both in play or anything else, I just discard it because there's really no point to having it if both are in play or if Bella's in play. Next up, we have Come Into the Light. So there's 2 of these, cost 3. Remove up to 2 obstacles from a single location. So this can be very, very helpful because if you have a location, you can just pay 3 power to get rid of both from one location. So that's obviously a great card. You get 2 of these, so in essence you could actually end up getting rid of, these 2 cards can actually get you half your objective done. But yeah, so just a great card. Obviously if there's only 1 obstacle in a location, you could always just play it and then get rid of that 1 obstacle in that location, because the card says it can remove up to 2, so it could do 1 or both. So we have Temper, very simple, 2 power, remove 1 obstacle. That's about it. It basically just removes an obstacle from a location. It's not that bad. Next up we have Get Out. This one is 5 power, remove 3 obstacles. A very, very good card. I think the 5 cost is actually worth it because this card can really boost your objective. I've gotten this a few times at the very beginning of the game, and it just gives me a great head start on my opponents because right into like turn 2 or turn 3, depending on how many people you're playing with and and who goes first, you can end up getting this card to be played on turn 2. So this is incredibly important. Remove 3 obstacles. I always play this. If I get it, I'll save up the power and then play it, because 3 obstacles in one shot is really good. Because sometimes your opponents are looking at your board and they see that you have a lot and they don't fate you, and then you play that and then you're ending with a lot less than they originally thought. So next up we have Belle Is Mine. You get 2 of these, each of them costs 1. You perform a vanquish action. So this is really helpful if both of your vanquish actions are well, if one of them's blocked and the other one you're just not at, this can actually do that for you. But since you have 2 vanquish locations, I kind of feel like it's overkill to have a card that does a vanquish action. So I mean, that's just me, but yeah, so you can actually I tend to discard this because I have a vanquish action that I can use. I don't need a card to do a vanquish action. So, I mean, it can be helpful if you need to do something quick, like if your opponent's going to win, so you need to actually get rid of some obstacles, so you should actually probably then use that card to do that, but I've never found much use with it. So next up we have 2 Hunter's Instincts. You defeat a hero with a strength of 3 or less. Very simple. Essentially, it's just a card that just gets rid of someone. You don't have to use allies, you don't have to use vanquish. So this card just defeats someone for you. So this can actually be helpful with removing objectives if the hero you're using to defeat, or the hero you're defeating with this, has that type of ability. So then, yeah, the cost of 3 can be well worth it. So, depends on what hero you're using this with. If you're going to use this, I would say use it on a hero that will give you a benefit. If that hero is basically just sitting there and it's not doing much, and you can do without the locations that it's blocking, you could just leave it and get rid of this and then find other cards that can help you. But if you stand to benefit from playing this card, go for it, because it can actually help you out. Alright, so next up we have Swoon. You get 3 of these. This is one of the better cards in the deck. Replace 1 obstacle, then either gain 3 power or draw 3 cards. So a lot of people might wonder why you're trying to, or why you're replacing objectives when your goal, or not objectives, why you're replacing obstacles when your objective is to get rid of them. Now this card obviously does that, but it also gives you a huge bonus because of that. You can either gain 3 power or draw 3 cards. So this can be incredibly important because, well, at the beginning of the game, when you just get rid of one, this card can actually help you because you can replace that one, and then you can end up getting 3 cards, which can be incredibly helpful. Or you can even use it to gain power if you have more expensive cards in your hand. So obviously it's a great thing to do, and if you get this card, I tend to use it, but I really use it for the 3 cards, because having 3 extra cards is way better than having 3 extra power. So that's why I always use Swoon when I get it. Now obviously it requires that you have gotten rid of at least 1 objective before you play it. So make sure that you have an objective. Make sure you have 1 obstacle done before you play that, because having an obstacle can be important. So here we have Intimidating. Reveal cards from the top of your villain deck until you reveal an ally. Place that ally in your hand, discard the rest. So this is essentially just scrying from Jafar's deck, except you don't have the choice between item and ally. This one just searches for allies. So basically you just look at the top of your deck until you find an ally, and then when you find the ally, put it in your hand, discard the rest of the cards. Simple as that. If you need some strength to defeat some heroes, great way to do that. Just keep in mind that you're going to end up discarding some cards unless your top card was an ally. So if you're ready to take that risk, go ahead. Time to follow me. Perform a move, item, or ally action. So this is essentially a way to move around LeFou. I tend to use this to move around LeFou. So if you have LeFou down, you have to vanquish somewhere else, and you have this card, obviously do this to move him. Now, because it's a move or ally action, you can't move him to any location, you have to move him adjacent. And yeah, so if you play this card, you have to move him adjacent, and then you basically are able to go from there. So this card is basically just a card version of that action. So if you go to a location, you can basically turn a play card action into a move an item or ally action. So it can be helpful. Just keep in mind that you're paying 1 power to do that. So is it really important that you do use that to move around an item or ally? So next up we have Take Me Instead. This is the last effect in the deck. Reveal cards from your fate deck until you find a hero, and then play that hero to Beast Castle, remove one obstacle. So this is free. So you might be, wow, removing an obstacle for free? Yeah, but it's free because it has to balance, and to make it to further your objective and be free, it has to do something bad, which is to basically play the top card, or play the top hero of your fate deck to the Beast Castle. So this can be dangerous, but it could also be incredibly helpful if it pulls out a hero that can actually remove obstacles if defeated. So this can end up being very beneficial, but you got to keep in mind that you can end up doing something bad to yourself, like giving yourself a bad hero. Alright, next up, conditions. We just have 3 of the same condition, not two different kinds. So this condition is Beautiful as Me. During their turn, if another player takes 4 or more actions, you may play Beautiful as Me. You may remove 1 obstacle token. It's really good against really a lot of villains, because all villains have 4 spots. But there are certain villains that have heroes on their board, like Mother Gothel, or certain locations that only have 3 actions, like Prince John has the jail, which has only 3. And there's also villains like Evil Queen that have 5 at one location. So this card can be great for those, but a lot of times you have to think about, is your opponent really going to do all 4 actions at a location? Because sometimes they don't. But if you can obviously see someone who needs power, and they're going to a location with probably the most power, and that location has a lot of stuff that they can do, like obviously keep it, because it allows you to remove 1 obstacle token. So it can be really good. But I tend to always make sure I look at my opponents, try and predict what they're going to do, and then judge from there if I'm going to keep it or not. Because at the end of the day, it's 1 card, maybe 2, up to 3 cards in your hand. If you have 3 in your hand, obviously discard 2 of them if you're going to do that, because you can't do all 3 at once. You'd have to have 3 opponents that all do 4 on their turn. Play this if you know that your opponent is going to most likely do something. If not, discard it, because it can actually hold up a spot in your hand that you can actually use to get a card that removes more than 1 obstacle token, or do more than just remove 1 obstacle token. So that's his deck. Quite simple. Now I'm going to go into his Fate deck. I'm going to start with all the heroes. So the very first hero we have is Beast. When Beast is played or moved, move 1 ally, or move any allies out of Beast location to any other location. Then when the Beast is vanquished, move all obstacles from Beast Castle. So Beast Castle is the very last location. When he's played, essentially he just moves all the allies out of his way. That can be very bad because you don't have any ally move an item or ally action. So if that's the case, Beast is going to basically live, because now you can't move your allies back into his location. So that's where you can use the Time to Follow Me card to get some allies moved back onto his location, or you can just play new ones if you have new ones. So this is what I mean by benefit to defeating. You can remove all obstacles from Beast Castle. So you just remove those 2 obstacles. So if Beast is in your realm and you're getting rid of obstacles with other cards, I would get rid of the other ones first, because you know if you defeat Beast you can get rid of those. So there's no point to getting rid of those, because then Beast is just going to be useless if you vanquish him, despite the fact that he will open up 2 locations. So that's a thing that the Beast does. Now we have Cogsworth. All other heroes in Cogsworth location gain 1 strength. Quite simple. Cogsworth himself doesn't gain 1 strength. It says all other heroes. So if Cogsworth is at a location with other heroes, all of those heroes get +1 strength. Cogsworth is stuck at 2. Quite simple. If Cogsworth is at a location with a hero of strength 3 or more, Cogsworth will basically add 1 strength to him or her, making that 4 strength, so that you cannot use Hunter's Instinct to get rid of them. So just keep that in mind with Cogsworth. Lumiere. When Lumiere is played, you may move a hero to a new location. Quite simple. he can move the beast out of the way of your allies if you stack allies back up. Lumiere is not limited to the rules of adjacents, so he can be played or he can move any hero to any location. So if you're stacking up allies and Lumiere hasn't been played yet, you either want to act fast or you want to hold off on moving allies until Lumiere's played or discarded. So Bell, no obstacles can be removed while Bell is in play. This is pretty bad because now your objectives are pointless. So what this means is basically defeat Bell for any other hero, because if you defeat like the Beast before Bell, the Beast gets rid of obstacles, and if you don't defeat Bell before Beast, when you defeat Beast, he's just going to go away, and you're not going to get the benefit of removing these obstacles. So you want to be very careful with that. So Bell is basically just a defeat me first character. Mrs. Potts and Chip, when played, you may move all heroes or fate items to new locations. Quite simple, really. This is actually just a worse form of Lumiere because he can move all heroes to new locations and obviously move fate items, but so you got to be careful with Miss Potts. She's just a leveled up form of Lumiere, so you got to be very vigilant of that. Keep in mind your opponent might be trying to stack Cogsworth onto other heroes to boost their strength, which is a great idea for them, but for you, you want to make sure that you're defeating them, especially Cogsworth and Bell, because those two can end up strengthening your heroes, which can be bad. So we have Maurice. When Maurice is played, find and play Maurice's invention to Maurice's location. If Maurice is vanquished, remove all obstacles from Bell's house. So this is where if you have Maurice out, keep the objectives on Bell's house because you can vanquish him because he's only 2 strength to do that. So when he's played, Maurice's invention get played to his location. So what is Maurice's invention? Well, it's an item that all allies of the same location as Maurice's invention lose 1 strength. So if this invention is stacked onto a location where you have all of your allies to defeat, all of your allies are minus 1 strength, and if it's also the location with Cogsworth, all the allies get +1 and all of your allies lose 1. So in the end, to defeat Cogsworth, you're going to need, or to defeat anyone, like if you're trying to defeat Bell at this location, Bell has 3 now, and if you have someone like the mob, which has 4 strength, well, Bell has 3, and now your mob has 3. So that could actually be used to vanquish Bell. But now you're using that entire thing to do that. Well, if these 2 weren't here, you can just use 1 wolf, assuming you have another wolf somewhere else. So now you have to defeat someone weaker, you have to use something a lot stronger. So keep that in mind. One other thing to note. Maurice's invention was printed with a strength counter. That's obviously a typo. Items don't have strength. This card has led a lot of people to believe that this card can be vanquished and basically destroyed like the invention in the movie. But that was not an intention of the designers, and they have corrected themselves and said that this card should not have this. So if and when they come out with an updated version of this game, of this expansion, with all the typos and misprints fixed, this card will not have a strength. So basically, when you're playing this, ignore the strength in the bottom left. So now we're on to effects of his fate deck. So first one is It Is You. Just replace 1 obstacle in each location. So this is where I would start to try and actually remove obstacles from 1 location at a time. Like if I was Gaston, I would try and get rid of both obstacles from one location, instead of trying to just take one from every location, because a card like It Is You can replace one from every location. So if you have one location with no obstacles, all that card can do is add one of those back. But if you have one from every location gone, it can replace all 4. So in my strategy, I always make sure I get rid of 2 from one location all at the same time, so that cards like that have little to no effect on me, because all they can do is affect one location instead of all 4. So next up we have I've never seen so many books. Replace one obstacle. Basically, just replace an obstacle. The rose. Play the other fate card you have drawn, discard the rose, and pick 2 more fate cards. Play one, remove one obstacle. Okay, so the rose is really good for your opponents, but it also can technically do you a benefit. So if this is drawn with another card, the rose essentially forces the other player to play that card, if they choose to use the rose. If they do not, they can just play the other card instead of the rose, and then that'll be it. But if they choose to use the rose, basically they're playing the other card they drew, they discard the rose, draw 2 more fate cards, play one of those, but they also remove an obstacle. So the rose is essentially just a double fate, but as a cost for the double fate, they have to get rid of one of your obstacles. So if they want to be mean and fate you twice in one turn, they can with the rose, but they also have to aid in getting rid of an obstacle. So the next effect is Saving My Life. Replace all obstacles in a single location. So I would much rather have Saving My Life affect me than have It Is You affect me, because at the end of the day, if I get rid of 2 of these and Saving My Life shows up, it just replaces at most 2. So I'd much rather have 2 get replaced in one turn than have It Is You played and replace 4, 1 from every location. It's much easier to get around Saving My Life than it is to get around It Is You. Next up we have the Magic Mirror. Find and play Beast, shuffle the Fate and the Fate discard pile, including the Magic Mirror, back into the Fate deck. So this card basically bends the rules. Normally when stuff says to shuffle the Fate card back into or Fate discard pile back into the Fate deck, this card stays out because it is still in play while the shuffling is happening, and then this becomes the first card on the discard pile. But that is not the case with this card. It specifically breaks that rule, saying that the Magic Mirror goes back into the Fate deck. This allows the Beast to get found and played, which can destroy your stacking of allies. It can basically wreck that, so that now you have less allies in a single location because it's playing the Beast. But obviously if you defeat the Beast, you get some benefits from it. So obviously there's a silver lining somewhere. Massaging My Feet. Replace 2 obstacles. It can be anywhere, 2 from one location, 1 from 2 different locations, whatever. It's just replace 2 obstacles. It's not that bad. And then lastly, we have 2 Be Our Guests. Find a hero in the Fate discard pile and play them to any location. Quite simple. Basically, any hero in the Fate discard pile can get replayed. There's no strength limit. So if you defeat the Beast, Be Our Guest can be a way to get the Beast back. Obviously, they would probably try and get Belle back out with Be Our Guest, because with Belle you can't even start or do anything with your objective. So yeah, that's the Fate deck. So now for my actual strategy. For my strategy, I really only focus on getting rid of objectives as quickly as possible. Now obviously there are ways to do that. Like I said, there are lots of cards that remove obstacles for you. I mean, you've got Come Into the Light to remove up to 2 obstacles from a single location. You've got Tempered, or just remove 1 obstacle. And you also even have Get Out to remove 3. You have take me instead to remove one obstacle each, though they play a hero on you. You have these conditions. Now, these conditions are not as, these aren't as nearly as good as these cards because these rely on a condition. So, there's that. So, you have all those cards that are available to you. Now, as difficult as it sounds, these two can also be beneficial to getting rid of the objectives or the obstacles from these locations. So don't skip these, because these can actually be helpful, especially if you don't have all of those cards down there. So yeah, I just go ham. I make sure I get as much power as I can, always maximizing the power I get, because with the exception of Take Me Instead, the ones that just get rid of obstacles with no fuss, those are expensive. 3 cost, 2 cost, 5 cost. It's expensive to complete his objective. So if you don't want to be fading yourself with Take Me Instead, or having to do a lot of extra stuff to make sure that you can vanquish Beast and Maurice, you're going to need a lot of power to just get rid of objectives. Now, if you play all of these together, you get rid of 3 plus 1 plus 4. Now, 3 plus 1 plus 4 is 8. So if you have all 4 of these cards, you can win, assuming that your opponent does not draw any single card in between that replaces any obstacles. These 4 cards by themselves are enough to just get rid of all of your objectives. But if some are replaced, you're going to need to do more than just these 4 cards. You can either go through your entire deck and find one of these cards again. You can use Take Me Instead, or you can vanquish Maurice or Beast. So, right out the bat, as soon as we start, I'm jumping to the Tavern or the Woods, depending on what cards I have. If I did not go first, I'd most likely jump to the Woods so that I can just gain power, and then I can also fade my opponents if I see that my opponents are making progress. Obviously, if I don't have to do that. Now, if I have Monsieur d'Arc right off the bat, I might even jump here to the Tavern so that I can play him and also activate him right away. This assumes that I'm not going first. If I'm going first, I can't do this in the same turn because I need 3 power to do that, and I can't do that because I only get 2 from this location. So there's a lot of things that this deck and this board can do. Now, obviously, like I've said before, when I'm removing obstacles, I remove them from the Tavern in the Woods first, but I don't remove any from any other location until both are done from one location. This is to basically counteract the terrible It Is You. So I'd much rather remove both obstacles from one location and have them both put back from saving my life than take one from every location and have them all put back from It Is You. So obviously that is up to you. I just don't see how removing one from every location can be helpful, especially because you're opening yourself up to getting most of them put back, especially when both from Belle's house and both from Beast's castle can be removed from defeating Maurice and Beast respectively. So there's that. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm trying to get these cards here. If I don't have these cards, I am just burning through my deck trying to get to these. Obviously, if there are certain cards that are helpful, like these, Monsieur d'Arc is a nice one, or allies, I'm playing those as I get them, but I'm playing them to locations where I will most likely be faded if there's no heroes out. Otherwise, I'm playing my allies to locations with heroes, because as you're burning through your deck, you should be vanquishing so that when your opponents do more stuff with fading you, that they can't start an unstoppable army by stacking all of your ally or all of their heroes in one location, so that it basically becomes impossible to vanquish, because they're all going to be boosted by Cogsworth. So I'm trying to keep up with my fading. I'm trying to make sure that I have the option to vanquish at any point in time, so I'm always trying to make sure that Belle's house isn't covered up. If not, the tavern's always a great location to vanquish. So yeah, I'm burning through my deck, trying to get to those. A great card to help you burn through your deck is Swoon. Obviously though, it requires you to replace one obstacle, but with all the different options to remove obstacles, Swoon can just be helpful. So what I tend to do is use Swoon right off the bat, especially if I have just one removed, because putting one back and grabbing 3 cards can be helpful, because you can end up grabbing 1, 2, or maybe 3 of these cards. So that's incredibly important. And one thing to point out is if you have Monsieur de Arc down and you have Swoon, do not play Swoon to gain 3 power to then activate Monsieur de Arc to remove the obstacle that you replaced. 1, that's pointless because you're gaining 3 power. So to play Swoon, you're paying 1. So when you gain 3 power, you're only really gaining 2 power out of that. And then you're spending both of that power to activate Monsieur de Arc to remove 1 obstacle. It's just a way to get rid of Swoon and do absolutely nothing. So never use Swoon to gain power to activate Monsieur de Arc. To be honest, never use Swoon to gain power in general, unless you absolutely need to. Because grabbing 3 cards is way more important than gaining 3 power. Because you can gain 3 power in 2 turns, but sometimes you might not even be able to gain 3 cards in 2 turns. So yeah, utilize your discard locations. Utilize those, because to search your deck you're going to need to use those a lot. So yeah, right off the bat, I'm just trying to get through my entire deck, find all the cards that remove obstacles from one location at a time, so that when the time comes that I get faded, I'm minimizing the effect that those cards can have on me to an extent. Obviously, if your allies get moved or you play them to the wrong location, remember you have time to follow me to move them around, though there's only 2 of these, so the number of allies you can actually move around is really low. For some reason it says items when really items can only be attached. The only items in this deck can be attached to hero or allies, so in reality you're moving the ally that has the item attached to it. You're not moving the item. So yeah, it's basically my strategy. That's Gaston. Check my subreddit. I've got another poll going on for who I should do next. Yeah, I mean, Gaston's fun, so I hope that this was helpful. Obviously, if you need any more help or have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will definitely get back to you so that I can help you out further, because that's what this is about. Yeah, if you have any recommendations for villains you want me to cover, I can go ahead and do that. I'm doing the poll just so I can get some community feedback on what people want, but if someone specifically wants a certain villain, I can go ahead and do that. Yeah, so there's that. Join the Discord, join the Villainous subreddit, join mine. It's all in the description. Thanks for watching.